Hi, I'm Jamie from Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite travel-friendly games with what I'm calling rapid replayability. The context for this is that Megan and I and two friends are taking a trip to Japan this year, and I would love to take along 1 to 2 games because we have a limited space in our suitcases that we can have available to play in our downtime potentially every day. I don't know exactly how it'll go. It's been a while since I've traveled with friends in this way. So we're looking for games that travel well. So small package doesn't take up a lot of space. Even I'm open to taking the games out of the box and putting them into smaller containers that play up to 4 players, which I understand is a constraint that isn't often needed for travel. Oftentimes you might just be traveling with your partner. I have a different video about games that travel well, especially if you're only traveling with one other person. But these games must go up to 4 players, and that they have rapid replayability, in that you could enjoy playing these games if you are even playing them every day. And also kind of a soft requirement here is that the games don't take too long. I'm not necessarily looking for games that last over an hour, because that's probably, we're in a different country. We want to spend most of our time experiencing this other country. So travel-friendly games that play up to 4 players that are highly replayable back to back to back, like day after day after day, and that don't take too much time to play. So some honorable mentions that I'll mention for this category briefly are Race for the Galaxy, The White Castle, Herbaceous, Magic the Gathering, Citadels, Let's Go to Japan, High Society, Harmonies, Faraway, Scout, Moonrollers, Seven Wonders, Libertalia, Star Realms Legacy, Point Salad, and Bag of Chips. And I put Star Realms Legacy on there as one that I haven't played yet. I've received my Kickstarter copy of it. But I am curious. I found out that the components of the game don't take up that much space. So it could be interesting to take it on the trip and play through a legacy game or a campaign game on the trip. So you have a little bit of this story that you're adding to the story of the trip with friends as you're traveling. But let's jump into the top 10. And the first pick of mine is a little bit of a cheat here, because it's really just bringing a deck of cards on the trip. A deck of cards doesn't take up much space at all. You probably also need a pen and maybe a pad of paper or a few sheets of paper to keep track of different things. But a deck of cards, you can play so many different games with a deck of cards. You can play older games like hearts and spades and all sorts of trick-taking games, shedding games. You can also play newer games. I'm blanking on the game right now, but there's a great cooperative game that uses just a single deck of cards as well. Someone will say it in the comments. I'm just blanking on it right now. But yeah, you can play so many different games with the deck of cards. I think hearts would probably be my go-to, but I also love shedding games. So we might play BS. We might play spades. That is definitely a viable component that we might bring on the trip, just a deck of cards. That's number 10. The rest are specific games, and here is My City Roll and Build. This is a game that I have not played as a campaign game, but I did play either 1 or 2 games of it at Geekway to the West a year or so ago and had a great time. I did play the full My City, 2 players with Megan, and had a great time with it. But I wanted to include one game on the list similar to Star Realms Legacy that is a campaign game, because I think that could be a lot of fun to play on a trip where you do have that additional story that you're adding to your trip day to day. Something little to look forward to at the end of the day, as you're just winding down. And in My City Roll and Build, it uses this really clever combination of dice, where when you roll these 2 dice, you actually put them together to form a polyomino shape, and you have to draw that polyomino shape on a piece of paper. And there is also another die requirement here telling you what you can or can't build. And generally, you're trying to fill the land up, but new rules are revealed as you go through the campaign. I loved playing My City, and in the player 2 of My City Roll and Build, I had a great time as well. It's completely simultaneous. It doesn't take long. It plays rather quickly. And from what I could tell, the rules that you add to it aren't all that complex. So you're adding little twists to the rules from session to session. So My City Roll and Build at number 9. And number 8 is the Vale of Eternity. So there are a few games on this list that are mostly card games that don't take up much space at all. And the Vale of Eternity is certainly one of those games. This is a game where a lot of the replayability, or almost all the replayability, comes from the vast variety of cards and the order in which you decide to play them, the order in which they become available even for you to draft from the center. It's a game about building combos, and the combos are primarily built around, or there are a few different ways the combos are built, but kind of the twist in this game is that they're built around the currency, which you can see down here. There are tokens that are worth 1, 3, and 6, and they're not just numbers. They are also specific resources in the game. So a card might say, in fact, I think this card refers to the 3 value tokens. It's giving you a bonus every time you use or spend or maybe gain a 3 value token. And so it gives you a reason to focus on that specific token type. This game also includes an element of benefit pairing, where when you draft a card, you're also gaining specific tokens associated with that card. So these tokens, this currency does a lot in the game that adds to the combos that emerge from the cards. But there's so many different cards, so many different combos. I could definitely see myself playing this game back to back to back. That's the Vale of Eternity at number 8. At number 7 is The Crew. So I love the idea. I guess this is also similar to a campaign game like My City, but I love the idea of having a game like The Crew. This is a cooperative trick-taking game where you play maybe a quick mission or two on the first night, and then you play the next few missions on the next night. You have this sense of progression over the course of the trip, and as it gets more and more difficult, slightly more and more complicated as you play. There aren't too many games that do this that I'm aware of. I think that The Crew is maybe the first one that I was fully aware of that did this idea where it took a very simple game and let you start off very easy, and you had this sense of progression of missions getting harder and harder as you play. And really, you can jump in at any point. You don't have to start with the first mission if you don't want to. You could start at mission 20 if you're a really experienced trick-taking player. But yeah, I think The Crew would work great for a trip. The only reason that I probably won't bring it on our trip is that we have already played a lot of The Crew and some amount of The Crew Deep Sea as well. But there is a newer game called The Gang. It says The Crew at number 7. The Gang is a newer game that is a little similar to The Crew, but it's based around the idea of poker. So it's a cooperative poker game that I've really enjoyed lately. It doesn't have the missions that The Crew has. It does have a lot of twists that you add as you play, depending on whether or not you won the round. So if you succeed in a round, it gets a little bit harder the next round with a little random twist. Or if you failed the previous round, the next round gets a little bit easier. What you're trying to do in The Gang is you're trying to, with limited communication, you're trying to guess the strength of each player's hand. And so by the end of a round, you need to have accurately guessed the order of the strength of each player's hand without knowing the strength of each player's hand. So you have a limited communication throughout the round as to how strong each player's hand is. And not only is it limited communication, but because it's Texas Hold'em poker, you have an increased amount of information that may impact the value of your hand over the course of the round as you're playing more and more cards to the center of the table. I've really enjoyed my games of the Gang, and I pre-ordered a copy. I'm just waiting on the copy to arrive, so hopefully that arrives before we go to Japan. That is The Gang at number 6. At number 5 is So Clover. There are a couple of different games in this cooperative creative category, but So Clover, I think, is probably the most replayable on a back-to-back basis. So in So Clover, each player gains one of these Clover boards, and they put 4 different cards randomly out on that board, and you have to write down a single word on each edge that will help people guess the 2 words that it shares an edge with. So, for example, this person Oscars here, so that they could help everyone else guess that essence and award go along this edge. And to make this more difficult, after they've written these words down, they take these cards, they add another card or 2, and they shuffle them up, and they put them in the middle of the table with their Clover. So all other players, they don't know exactly which 4 cards go on here, and they definitely don't know which orientation they go on here until they start talking about it and communicating and trying to figure it out. So it gives a puzzle to the player who's writing the words, which everyone does simultaneously, and it gives a puzzle to the other players who are trying to figure out where the cards go. There's just a ton of replayability because these cards have 4 different words on each of them. There's there's just a lot of replayability in Still Clover. So I could see myself playing this game back to back to back on multiple days. That's the rapid replayability aspect of this. And of course, I haven't mentioned it, but all of these games can be packed into a fairly small package for a trip. That's So Clover at number 5. At number 4, I have Fantasy Realms. This is a combo building game, a hand building game that inspired a game that I designed as well, the game Red Rising, where you are given a hand of cards, and over the course of the game, you are giving up some of those cards and pulling more cards into your hand in the hopes of building the best combo. So, for example, this Forge card is worth 9 points by default. The bonus at the end of the game, it says you gain plus 9 points for each weapon and each artifact. So the Forge is worth 9 points plus 9 for each weapon and each artifact. So this card wants you to gain other weapons and other artifacts. If you do that, you're getting 9 points for each of them. And every card is kind of built like this, where it wants either a different category of card and wants another specific card, like this unicorn wants specifically the princess, or sometimes they don't want cards. So a card might be blanked. It might be completely wiped clean if you end up with a certain card that it doesn't want to be near. There's even with a fairly small deck of cards, I don't think there are that many cards in Fantasy Realms. Maybe, I don't know, 80 cards. There's a ton of replayability from the combos that emerge. It doesn't take long to play. It doesn't outstay its welcome. Probably the most cumbersome part of the game is the scoring, but there's an app that makes that easier. And I have played many, many games of Fantasy Realms and had a great time every time. So yeah, Fantasy Realms is my number 4 pick for this. Spots. Spots is a relatively recent discovery for me. I love Spots. So Spots is a push your luck dice rolling game where you have all these dice back here and you're rolling them to try to bring dogs into your home, to make dogs part of your family by placing dice on them. Let's see if I have an example of a dog here. Yeah, here we go. So you're placing dice on these dogs to try to cover up these slots and then eventually bring them into your home when you've covered all the slots on those dogs. The element of this game that brings in a lot of replayability, other than the dice rolling aspect, which adds variability at least out of your slightly out of your control, are these tiles. So every time you play Spots, you play with a different variety of tiles. I think the red ones stay the same. You always need the red ones in play. But these other 4, you always have a different yellow, a different blue, a different purple, a different turquoise or teal. And these are the actions that you can take in the game. On your turn, you choose one of these actions. So the vast variety of tiles adds a ton of replayability to Spots. I've had a different experience every time I've played thanks to the variety of these tiles and the variety of the dice rolling in the game. So yeah, I could definitely see myself playing Spots on this trip and playing, just a quick game of Spots every night and having a blast with it. So that's Spots at number 3. And number 2 is Forest Shuffle. I love Forest Shuffle. This is a cards only game. You only need cards in this game. You don't even need a box as big as it is. And as many cards are in the game, every card is actually, or many of the cards are actually 2 cards because they have animals on the top or the bottom, or wildlife on the top or the bottom, or wildlife on the left and the right. So these are essentially 2 cards built into one that you end up tucking under or next to a tree in your display. These cards all do different things. Some of them are ongoing powers. Some of them are endgame points. Some of them are, most of them are endgame points. Some of them are instant benefits that you gain. There's so many different subsets of cards in the game. I could replay the Forest Shuffle many, many times, and I have replayed it many, many times, even just with the core set. But now there are multiple expansions that are coming out. So I would love, if I have the ability, to get one of these expansions before the trip. And that would almost definitely have me take Forest Shuffle on the trip. Maybe the only caveat for this game is that it does take up a fair amount of space. And so it isn't something that we could play like on the train in Japan. We would have to play it in the house. So it might be a good idea for us to bring one game that we can play on the train and one game that we can play when we're settling down in our Airbnb or ryokan at night. But Forest Shuffle is a game that I think has an immense amount of replayability because of the vast variety of cards and because many of the cards are 2-for-1 cards, these top and bottom, left to right cards. So that's a Forest Shuffle at number 2. Forest Shuffle was almost number 1 because I was hesitant to make one of my games the number 1 game. But really, I have to say that Rolling Realms has a ton of replayability. So Rolling Realms and Rolling Realms Redux and all the promos, this is a game that I designed that we published at Stonemaier Games. And I've played it, I don't know, almost 80 times at this point, probably even more. I've played it 74 times on live play and then more times on the tabletop as well. but it's a game that just has a ton of replayability due to the vast variety of realms. In Rolling Realms, you have 3 realms in front of you. All players have the same 3 realms. One player, doesn't matter who, rolls some dice, and you use the numbers on those dice in the realms that you have in play, try to get the best score on those 3 realms. A full game of Rolling Realms is to do that 3 times with 3 different sets of realms. But the nice thing about Rolling Realms is that you can get a nice, robust experience just by playing a single round of the game, and then you can play the next round the next day, the next round the next day. So it gives us the ability of just playing a 10 to 15 minute round at the end of the day if we just want to chill and roll some dice. Or if we want to play a longer game, then we can play another round or another round. And I mentioned Rolling Realms Redux specifically because we included in the game a tuck box that you could either use in the Rolling Realms Redux box itself to keep the cards upright, or you can use it as a travel box. You can put some, it fits pretty well if you put 2 dice, and you can put, you always need the 2 dice. You can put some erasers, you can put 4 pens in there, and put around, I would say around 40 cards in there. So you can travel with Rolling Realms in a very, very small box and get the experience, the full experience of playing the game. So that is almost definitely what we'll do, because we have this travel box to carry Rolling Realms with us, along with one of these other games when we go to Japan. So yeah, Rolling Realms is definitely my number 1 pick for this. It has that element. It's small. It has rapid replayability in spades due to the vast variety of realms and the different combinations of realms. Even if you brought this limited number of realms, the combination had a ton of different puzzles. But yeah, those are my top 10 picks for travel-friendly games with rapid replayability that play up to at least 4 players in a relatively short amount of time. I would love to hear your thoughts on maybe your favorite game on this list that whether or not you've traveled with it, there can be a hypothetical element if you've traveled or not traveled with it. I'd love to hear your favorites in the comments below, or if you have another game to add to the list that fits those categories, let me know in the comments below. This video may be released while we're in Japan, after we've taken the trip to Japan. I'm filming it before we go on the trip, so I don't know if it'll impact our actual trip to Japan, but it might impact trips in the future. So I appreciate your feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.